Hello everyone, and welcome to round 5 of the 2018 Biel Chess Festival. Round 4 saw all of the games drawn, and Nico here got his first draw of the tournament after 3 losses, and he drew against none other than Magnus Carlsen. It was a fantastic game. Nico had a better position, but in the end it was actually Carlsen who had to fight for a draw, and he was able to do it. So here, after finally breaking the losing streak, he faces Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with the black pieces though. So we didn't have a photo challenge for quite a while, so I thought we'd do one this video. So best of luck to everyone. Who is this chess player here? And since most of my audience is from the United States, this one will be a piece of cake for you. So there you have it, best of luck to everyone, and we do have a photo of this encounter. There you have it, Maxime on the left, Nico on the right. The photo was taken from Simon Bogenblust. It's an official photo from the Biel Chess Festival website, which a link to that will be in the description below if you want to check out some more photos. There are quite a lot of them, and they are quite lovely. So let's check out the game. We have c4 by Maxime, so the Frenchman goes for the English. Knight to f6, we have knight to c3, e6, e4, we have the Flohr-Mikenas-Carls variation, and now d5. And here white has a couple of options. You can capture with the c pawn, you can capture with the e pawn, you can advance your e pawn, which is what Maxime does here. E5, and now comes d4, the best reply. Pawn captures knight on c3, and now b captures on c3. It's a better move than doing something like f captures on g7 after c captures on d2 with check, bishop captures, Black is much more active here. So after d captures on c3, we have b captures on c3, queen captures on f6, and now comes knight to f3. Also possible is d4, but after that black will counter the center immediately with c5, and probably both of them know this line all too well. So Maxime decides to go for a different one. Knight to f3, knight to c6, and now d4, as the knight is now developed on c6, blocking the c pawn from coming to c5. We have e5, opening up the center, which may seem like harsh decision since the black king is in the middle of the board, but the white king is also in the middle of the board. And here, while you could capture on e5, for example, d captures on e5, this would actually give black very active play, as now the queen is eyeing the g2 pawn, not allowing the bishop to be developed. White would need to spend more time to finish development. So instead, Maxime gets a very nice idea here. Instead of capturing the pawn, he gives up a pawn. He plays bishop to e2, allows black to capture on d4. We have pawn captures on d4, and now he doesn't even bother to recapture. Rather, he casts first bishop to g5, attacks the queen. Queen to g6, and now comes castles. So doesn't bother to recapture the pawn, allows black to capture here with d captures on c3, but you're not getting anything here. You're just going to lose time, and your king is still in the center. So we have bishop to e7, continuing development, bishop to d3, now attacking the queen. And although now you could use this opportunity to develop another piece and block the attack on your queen, instead a queen to d6 is played. We have bishop captures, knight captures, and only now c captures on d4, grabbing the pawn back, where Nico castles, and we have rook to e1. So if you look at this position, black does have a slightly better pawn structure, even though all of his pawns are still, on starting point, but he does have 2 pawn islands, white has 3 pawn islands, but Maxime's pieces are much more active, and this will prove sufficient as compensation. b6, preparing to develop the light square bishop, and here a very nice move by Maxime, not allowing black to continue his development, immediately pushing c5. And now it seems like he's offering a free pawn here, but in fact he's not. After captures, and captures, the queen still has to keep an eye on the knight on e7. After rook to c1, the queen is under attack, and after you move the queen d6, the only square good enough to defend this knight, then you get bishop captures on h7. King captures, queen captures here, pawn captures, and after rook captures here, it's actually white who would have a better pawn structure. Even though material would still be equal, Maxime would have a much better position. 2 pawn islands now against 3 pawn islands, and rooks really love them lonely pawns. So after c5, queen to f6, he doesn't bother capturing. Bishop to e4, now attacking the rook on a8, c6 blocking, c captures, a captures, and now just to check, how you're doing, feel free to pause the video here and find the strongest move in the position. It's a very nice move, a move that wins a pawn, so your spidey senses always need to be tingling. I will give it a couple of seconds if you want to decide whether to do it. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations. You are an excellent player. A queen to b1 is the move. As you can see now, both queen and the bishop are attacking the h7 pawn, and the queen is also attacking the b6 pawn. So there is no way to defend both threats. Bishop to f5, blocking the attack against the h7 pawn. And now Maxime captures the pawn. Queen captures on b6. Now, by capturing on b6, he has created a nice passed a pawn. Bishop captures, rook captures, and now comes queen to d6. Queen to c5, immediately forcing a trade of queens, as the queen cannot move. Both queen and rook would be attacking the knight on e7. So queen captures, pawn captures, and now comes knight to d5. How will it be possible for Maxime to take advantage of this extra pawn and maybe push for something more than a draw? Let's check it out. What does Maxime do? Well, he does have a passed pawn, so he pushes it. Pawn to a4. G6, Nico creates some breathing room for the king. Maxime does so as well. Rook f to b8, and then now comes rook to c4. Rook to c4, it's a wonderful square for the rook. From c4, okay, it does seem like it's not very active, but the rook will be guarding the c5 pawn and the a4 pawn. So now this rook can become active. And another thing, from c4, there's no really good, there are no good squares for knight to attack the rook. e3 is impossible, b6 is impossible due to the c5 pawn. So a very nice square for the rook. Rook to a6. We have knight to d4, but the pawn on c6 is already guarded. Rook to b2, and then now comes rook to a3. We have king to g7, improving the position of the king. Rook to d3, now preparing moves like knight captures here, then the knight would no longer be defended. So knight to e7. We have knight to f3, and now comes knight back to d5. Here Maxime doesn't repeat it, rather he goes knight to e5. An e5 square is better than a d4 square. Rook to b4, offering a trade of rooks, and now we have rook captures, knight captures, and rook to d7, attacking the f7 pawn. There's no way to defend it. So first, king to g7, not allowing it to come with check. We have knight captures on f7, and here, although black can capture on a4, for example, rook captures here, but even then white would simply continue. Knight g5, attack the h7 pawn after h6, knight back to f7, attacking the h6 pawn now. After you push it, knight comes to d8, now there will be an attack against the c6 pawn. The rook can also come help here with a double attack. So after knight captures on f7, we have rook to a5. Nico doesn't want to capture the a4 pawn, he wants to capture the c5 pawn and create a passed pawn of his own. We have knight to g5, threatening to capture on h7, and now is the critical moment in the game. Feel free to pause the video here and, tell me, can Nico capture the c5 pawn? So I will give it a couple of seconds if you want to just, decide whether you want to do it. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, your spidey sense is tingling excellently. You can go fight crime. And for those of you who said yes, then, that's you still have some work to do. Rook captures on c5 doesn't work, but Nico did play it in the game. It loses to a very simple variation. Of course, now you're not going to capture the pawn with the rook, as your knight is hanging, and you're not even going to capture with the knight. Rather, you're just going to give a little check here. And after this check, it was actually in this position that Nico Georgiadis resigned the game. He resigned because the only available square for the king is g7, and after g7, knight to e6 check simply wins the whole rook. King to f6, doesn't really matter where the king goes, knight captures, and now it's all over. Black has no compensation. It's completely winning for white. So yeah, that's the game. I mean, it was winning even if Nico didn't capture here on c5. Better is to capture on a4, but he could have done that without even preparing to capture on c5. But it's winning for white either way. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it and that you're enjoying the Biel series so far. I would like to thank Mitchell Weintraub, Mickey Grammatikov, Jeff Fisher, David Compton, and Time Zone Plan for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, most likely with another game from the Biel Chess Festival, and we're gonna, check out some other photos and the standings after round 5, and of course we're continuing the Fisher series. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.